So you probably already know what Super Poly does. Discard a card, fuse using monsters from either player's board, can't be responded to, etc. blah blah blah. Question is, what is this card's practicality and how can we really use it? So today I'll be trying to go over all the best targets for Super Poly, but before this video starts, my man, you already know the drill. Friendly reminder to smash the like and subscribe button, and now let's get right into it. Alright, so the first card is a card that I consider being good, but kind of format dependent, and that would be Dragon Knight Draco Equist. You do need a Dragon Synchro monster for this card, as well as a Warrior monster, so let's just say that your opponent has Borreload Savage Dragon and Baron de Fleur. You could be able to summon this card, otherwise it might be a little too hard to summon. And it does have a decent effect if you have a Synchro monster of your own, well, a Dragon Synchro monster in your graveyard, but like I said, apart from that, it pretty much does nothing at all. After that, we've got a fusion monster that pretty much never saw play in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, but it could be good one day, and that would be Mysterio on the Dragon Crown. It's technically generic to summon because you only really need a Spellcaster monster and a Dragon monster to make it, but the issue is that these are types that are rarely kind of seen together in one single deck. Back when we had Dragoon, you could actually say that everybody and their mother had a Spellcaster in their deck, but now it's a little tricky because you might be able to find some dragons every now and then, but where does the Spellcaster really come from now? And that's the issue with this card. Unless you're playing Spellcaster monsters yourself, or if you're playing dragons and your opponent is playing Spellcasters, you might just never be able to summon this card. Anyways, next up is a card that I personally think will be relevant for pretty much forever, and that would be Guilty Gearfried, the Steel Magical Knight. It's a great card, it has a pretty nice effect, and it only requires 2 warrior monsters with different attributes. So Baron de Fleur and Destiny of Destroy Phoenix Enforcer used to be the best way to make that, but now things have changed because DPE is kind of out of the picture. Nonetheless, if you ever see a warrior deck doing actually well in the meta, you know how to counter it now. Alright, so now we have a card that basically has no effect whatsoever unless you're playing it in its real deck. The card that I'm referring to is Splendor Patrol Ship List, a card that is really only good in Splendor Patrol, but it's also a Super Poly target against Splendor Patrol. And all you really need to summon it is just 2 Splendor Patrol monsters, which is actually pretty nice considering the fact that Splendor Patrol is getting new support, and trust me, their new Synchro monster is insane, so if you're not prepared against them, you will struggle. Although I will admit this is a pretty niche Super Poly target that I don't think will come up too often, but better be safe than sorry. If you play a zombie deck, you might want to consider playing Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon because if you have Zombie World active on the field, all you really need would be just 2 monsters because that fusion monster would become the most generic Super Poly target out there. And it's also playable against Eldritch even when there is no Zombie World active on the field, but I don't think that's too relevant. Alright, so now I'll cover the most powerful Super Poly target of all time, but also the hardest one to summon, arguably. If this card hits the field, you win the game. It's that simple. The card I'm talking about is Cordius the Triphasic Delman, or whatever you're supposed to pronounce this card, and in order to make it, you need a Link monster, a Synchro monster, and an Xyz monster. The last time I saw a deck that actually lost to this card had to be like Puncture Laments because it was ending on Sprite Elf as well as Baron and Abyss Dweller, and the other time was maybe Adamancipator because of IP Masquerena, Dragite, and Abyss Dweller as well. But yeah, like I said, if you summon this card, you win the game because you can pay 6,000 life points to gain 3,000 attack, and then destroy 3 monsters your opponent controls, and recycle back a spell or trap card from your graveyard to your hand. Now for the more conservative Super Poly targets. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon is a simple classic one because all you really need is just 2 dark monsters on the field that are not tokens. That's it, that's all. I also really like its Regeki effect and the fact that it gains attack upon summon, but it's nothing really too interesting. With that being said, I do believe that Predaplan Dragos Tapelia might be a little better because its negation effect makes it live even on your opponent's turn, and that is always something that I can appreciate. And unlike Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, you don't really need 2 dark monsters on the field, but rather 1 dark monster and 1 fusion monster, so the fusion monster can technically be any kind of attribute. Alright, so the 2 final Super Poly targets are the most obvious ones, but also the best ones, so I still have to cover them. Number 2 is Mud Dragon of the Swamp, which can be summoned using any 2 monsters with the same attribute, but different types. So it can be used against Kashtira by using their Rise Heart and their Shangri-La, because Rise Heart is a Fire Warrior, and Shangri-La is a Fire Psychic, if I recall correctly. Furthermore, it can also be used against their Diablosis the Mind Hacker and the Rise Heart, because both are dark attributes, but Diablosis is Psychic, and the Rise Heart is Machine. Oh, and by the way, even the on-field effect of Mud Dragon of the Swamp is shockingly really relevant. First of all, if you have, let's say, the ability to summon Tearlaments Kid Kalos, if you're playing Tearlaments, you can call Dark and then they can't imperm your Kid Kalos. But even on your opponent's turn, Mud Dragon of the Swamp can be kind of like a baby interruption. If your opponent summons the Kashtira Unicorn and then searches the Kashtira Papillas, and you call Wind with Mudragon, they cannot use Papillas because you do have to target a Kashtira monster on the field in order to summon a Kashtira monster from the deck with a different attribute from the targeted monster. Therefore, the Mudragon of the Swamp is kind of a card that prevents your opponent from even summoning a monster from the deck. Anyways, last and definitely not least, like I said, the most obvious one, Garura, Wings of Resonant Life. It requires 2 monsters with the same attribute and with the same type, but this time with different names. Super generic, you can play it against just about any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Literally against like Sprite, because they can have like Toad and Swafrog, or Toad and Doofrog, and you can also use it against Gigantic Sprite or Sprite Elf, as well as any of the baby Sprite monsters that negate monster effects or spell and trap cards, like Sprite Red and Sprite Carrot, and you can also use it against like Exorcister or literally anything else. It's crazy because the decks that used to not lose to Super Poly now lose to Super Poly because of Garura and literally nothing else. And I want to say that's the reason why Super Poly is a good card. It's because of Garura, because even outside of being a Super Poly target, Garura is actually a really good card. It draws you 1 card when it's sent to the grave. It's a level 6, so you can use it for an Xyz summon of Beatrice, or Wallow or whatever, or a Synchro Material monster or Link monster. It doesn't matter. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.